Hello and welcome back to another devlog update for Rune Song. Everybody's favorite game about a blue-robed wizard child that also has a beard for some reason. My name's Toast, and this is a game I'm working on with my friend Babachu. Alright, so what have we been up to is the question on no one's mind. And it's actually quite a few things. You can see here on our GitHub repository, we took an unintentional month-long hiatus. Literally a month. It was from August 25th to September 25th. This was mainly due to work on my end, like day job work, and then Baba had family obligations. For anyone that doesn't know, he's a new dad, so he's been having to balance working on the game and raising his kid. I'll lead in with the most interesting bit we've been working on, which is a new boss fight for the sewer stage. We ended up going with a giant basilisk, however this went through a few iterations before we actually landed on that. Initially we were going for, the most obvious thematic choice, which would be a rat in my opinion. Like, you think sewers, there's not much you think about besides like nasty, yucky water and like rats, right? We actually discussed doing a rat king for a little bit, which for anyone that doesn't know, that's just like a bunch of rats like tangled by their tails. It's kind of nasty, but given that this would probably be pretty tough for Baba to draw and animate, we opted to drop that idea and go back to the generic giant rat type enemy. Also, I don't think like a big gross like a rat monster would really work, because our game is super cutesy and like, lighthearted and goofy. So maybe if we were doing like a Castlevania type game, Rat King would be sweet, but yeah, it wasn't gonna work. So now we decided to go with a rat, like I was saying, but the problem was like coming up now with an interesting move set for a rat. Like, aside from scurrying around and like scratching or biting for attacks, there's not really much to work with there to make the fight interesting or engaging. After that, it was back to the drawing board, and I just was trying to think of ways to like make this rat more interesting. So I came up with the idea of just going fully absurd, and I was gonna make him like a 1980s inspired old school hip hop artist called MC Rappling, of course. And I'm talking like full on Run DMC or like Sugar Hill Gang, like with the oversized necklaces, the tracksuit, and that weird hat they all had that I don't know the proper name for. Obviously, we didn't end up going with that either, but I just think it's so interesting, like all these twists and turns in the design process that lead you to the final result. And that's pretty much why I'm sharing all this behind the scenes. Just to show that it's very rarely a straight line from concept to the finished product. Like, you're usually workshopping a bunch of ideas before you get to the final iteration. Now that I've lost everyone's attention, I guess I should talk about like the fight itself and a bit of the challenges we faced once we landed on the actual basilisk concept. So for me, when it comes to designing bosses, there's a few hurdles that are always the same. How do I make the fight fun? How do I make it engaging? And then also, how do I make the boss arena visually like stimulating, interesting, and also mechanically cohesive with both the player and the boss himself? First up, I knew going in that a good chunk of the arena would need to be water, simply to just accommodate the boss. That being the case, I also needed to deter the player themselves from going in the water, otherwise they could exploit the entire fight and the whole thing would just fall apart. So my first attempt at this was just to damage the player anytime they went in the water, and I was like thinking like this would be under the guise that like players would assume it's a giant like snake type boss. Obviously he's coiled up under the water, even though like he's outside of it, his neck's sticking out, his body's underneath basically. I think this technically could have worked, but when you're designing things, and especially when it's something that's gonna hurt the player, I feel like you really want an extremely clear and concise visual that immediately telegraphs to the player at a glance, this is a danger zone, stay away from here. Failing to do that, the player is just gonna feel cheated if they get damaged. What I ended up doing was I had Baba draw bubbling water sprites, and then I made a steam particle effect to layer over them. And just like that, we had boiling water, which like visually makes the boss arena more interesting, and this directly telegraphs why you should do your best to stay out of the water. Next up, the arena was looking better, but something was still off, and that's when I realized I was using the normal stone tile set, which is fine, but I mean really, you're fighting a sewer boss in a sewer. It makes more sense to use sewer pipes, the platforms. So I swapped those out, and instantly it looked a whole lot better. So at this point now, Baba was finishing up the sprite work for the boss. I finished all the programming, so the AI was working as I intended it to, and it was kind of time for balancing. Now, personally, I'm a fan of difficult things. I like difficult games, I like difficult work, but I realize most people aren't like that, so I always try to balance the game much easier than what I personally enjoy, and that led to the following changes here. So basically, I increased the length of this main center pipe to give the player more room to work around the boss's attacks. I also added these upper sections on the left and the right, which was a heavy nerf. Like now, it's fairly easy to dodge most, if not all, of his attacks, simply by just getting a few shots in and then retreating to the opposite side that the basilisk is coming from. Okay, with all that being said, I think this is a good place to end, actually. I have more to talk about. Like, we did a lot more than just this boss, and I plan on showing that in this video. But, yeah, this one's already a bit longer than I'd like. Probably because I talked about Run DMC and MC Rattling too much, so sorry about that. We'll pick it up in the next video. As always, I humbly ask if you know anyone who may be interested in the game, just please show them the trailer, spread the word about our socials and Discord, and most importantly, wishlist the game on Steam if you haven't already. Big thank you to those who have. I know a bunch of people already have, so, I'm very appreciative. Thank you very much. And yeah, that's it. That's gonna do it for me. Hope life's been treating you well, and I will catch you in the next one.